Well, as Christine said just a moment earlier, let's get this party started. Welcome to our November FEI meeting. It's about making music. We have Kim Golden, who represents the BCA and was brought to us by Christine Hurt. She's on the board of the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. And I think you're going to find some very interesting conversations on how you manage a nonprofit during the COVID time and what they're doing now and how they're going to move forward. Also to let you know that on December 8th, we're going to have another virtual meeting. This is with a multi-billion-dollar nonprofit, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And Paul, who is the CFO and treasurer, he's going to talk about his time when he was in charge of auditing. And they run it like an audit firm, and he's going to entertain us with some stories and some facts and anything with nonprofits. I think you're going to find it very worthwhile. In January, we're planning to have a cybersecurity seminar led by Clifton Larson. And then in February, our favorite economist, Alex Mayer from the Federal Bank, is going to give us an update. And there will be some newly released data at the beginning of February that he hopes to incorporate with his conversation. So now I'd like to introduce Christine Hurt. She is with the local architectural firm, R. St. Gross, and she brought you the BCO today. So Christine, take it away.
So thank you, Joe. As Joe Wendell said, my name is Christine Hurt. I'm the CFO of Air St. Gross, a multidiscipline design firm. We're located in Locust Point in Baltimore. And I am the vice president of the board on the board of trustees of the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. I have had the opportunity to belong to FEI and take advantage of a wide range of interesting entities spotlighted through these lunch and learns and championed by Joe. Thank you, Joe. Today, we will be hearing from Kim Z. Golden, president of the Board of Trustees of the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. I've had the pleasure of working with Kim over the last several years as an active participant on the board. Kim is a lifelong financial executive, now retired. His professional experience includes the U.S. Treasury in the Office of International Monetary Affairs, Chemical Bank in International Finance Advisory and Investment Banking, T. Rowe Price as co-manager of a private equity fund investing in financially distressed and bankrupt companies, as well as the Venture Capital Fund Group and HSBC as global head of distressed investing and PM of a hedge fund focused on financially distressed companies globally. He currently participates in 3 nonprofit boards, helping to oversee 2 endowments. He maintains his CFA certification. He has a master's in public and international affairs from Princeton, Bachelor of Arts with high honors, and Bachelor of Music in Performance and Violin from Oberlin College. So, as we see, Kim's very busy and integrates the finance world that we all belong to the orchestral music world that is Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. With that said, I will turn over the presentation to Kim.
Christine, thank you very much. That was a very gracious introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'll look forward to talking to you about the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra and the business of a chamber orchestra. And I invite everybody to throw questions at us. I hope we'll have the opportunity to have a little bit of discussion, either about the operations or the financials, or even if you want the cultural aspects of an orchestra. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And we will launch the deck. Can everybody see that? Christine, are we
We're good.
Okay, so we are the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. Our music director is a very distinguished conductor, Markand Thakkar, who has conducted all over the world. He headed the conducting program at Peabody, and we're very lucky to have him as the conductor of the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. The BCO has been around for 37 years. We perform primarily in Baltimore County. Our longtime home has been Krauscher Auditorium at Goucher. And we hope to thrill people with great compositions from the classical repertoire. So as it says here, we really want to move and inspire our community with world-class performances. This is a professional orchestra. All of the participants in the orchestra are highly trained professional musicians, and they're compensated for playing with us. This is not an amateur orchestra in the region. It's a professional symphony orchestra. Its scale is a little bit smaller. Okay. Now, my understanding is that in order for everyone on this seminar to get credit, you have to answer some questions. So I've integrated some questions into the seminar, and here is question 1. And I think we'll also have some overlays that you'll be able to pick some multiple choice answers. So I don't know if you want to start that.
Yeah, you want me to do that one now, Kim? And then we'll move on into this fun question?
Yes, yes. Why don't we put the first question up? All right. This is very cool software. I really like this. Okay, so 71% of you have gotten this right.
Okay, and you can stop sharing anytime you want. Kim, thank you.
Okay. So this is Leonard Bernstein in all his glory. And the answer to the question, what's the difference between God and a conductor? God doesn't think he's a conductor.
Kim, I thought God didn't wave a baton.
Only when he's trying to be a conductor. All right. So what does the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra do? What do we do? You're all familiar with some of the great repertoire, some of the great composers, Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert, Mendelssohn. That's the center of the bullseye for us. That's generally where we reside. But the difference, and we go all the way to the 20th century. So we will play Bartók, Shostakovich, but most of our repertoire will be more in the classical and romantic eras, with some Baroque and some modern. So the difference between us and a major symphony like the Baltimore Symphony or the Boston Symphony or the New York Philharmonic is that we're smaller in scale. So a major symphony will typically put 80 people on the stage. For large scale works, they'll put 100 or 110 folks on stage, and we will generally have 20 to 40 people on stage. There's a big difference in the sound. So when you have 20 to 40 players, you get a beautiful clarity of sound. So there are pieces that you're very familiar with that you've probably heard all your life, like Beethoven's Fifth, When we do it, because there's a much smaller and tighter ensemble, you get to hear a lot of things that maybe you don't hear as well when the major symphony plays. That's not to take anything away from the Baltimore Symphony or the New York Phil or Boston or LA, but there's a beautiful musical clarity in a chamber orchestra, and it's really fun to listen. It's like you're hearing things for the first time. This guy you all know. This is with the crazy hair. This is Beethoven. This one you may not recognize. This is a young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And this is a mature Felix Mendelssohn. So three of the greats, three of the composers that make it into our concert schedule on a regular basis. We do 5 concerts a year, always on Sundays at 3 o'clock. It's a perfect time for doing these concerts. You can go out for brunch and then have a fabulous brunch and then come to a fabulous concert. Or you can come to a fabulous concert and then go out for a fabulous dinner. Either way, it makes for a great Sunday afternoon, and you can avoid the trials and tribulations of figuring out what the Ravens are going to be doing on any given day. We do not make a lot of mistakes, just saying. We generally have concerto soloists, not at every concert, but every year we'll have at least 1 or 2 soloists playing a concerto. Every year we do what we call an informant. So it's a highly integrated concert between music and presentation. Our presenter is Jonathan Pilevsky, who is the program director at WBJC, Baltimore's classical music station. And he does a slide deck before and after each of the pieces, explaining the music, explaining the composers, explaining their time, and always very witty and entertaining. He's quite the raconteur, and we do one of those a year. We also do 2 conducting workshops every year. We get aspiring conductors from around the globe. They come from all over the world to study with Marquand. And those run from 5 to 10 days. I'll talk a little bit more about those later. We also have an affiliation with a group, basically BCO players that are called Livewire, and they get money from foundations to bring classical music to the schools in Baltimore Metro. So Baltimore City schools and some of the private schools, but they will lecture and provide performance. And sometimes it's the first time that any of these kids have had any contact with classical music. Okay, we're ready for our second question. So, one, yes.
Hang on 1 second.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Thank you.
Now, this is a tough one. Technically speaking, this isn't a classical music question, but I'm sure everybody in this group has done some karaoke, and let's see what you think. Okay, you're mostly wrong. Karaoke means empty orchestra. Okay. Empty orchestra, and it's a fairly recent development. As you know, it requires electronics. So it's not an ancient art from Japan, but it started about 50 years ago. Okay, why couldn't the string quartet find their composer? If you know who this is, the answer jumps out at you, but you probably don't know who this is. So, because he was hiding. All right. In our conducting workshops, we utilize small ensembles and also full orchestra. So this is an example of one of our small ensemble sessions, and you can see that the conductor, Markand, is very hands-on. You know, conducting is gestural. So it's how does a conductor communicate with all the players to keep everybody together and to shape the musical line and to create a brilliant piece of music. So body language is very, very important in conducting. Markand spends a lot of time on the physical aspects of conducting as well as the musical aspects of conducting. And on the last 3 nights, our 10 fellows, the senior people in the workshops, all get to conduct a full orchestra. So they'll do a movement of Beethoven or Mendelssohn or Prokofiev to really give them the opportunity to work with their instrument, which is a full orchestra. And it's a fabulous opportunity for early conductors to hone their craft, and for even mature conductors to get a more sophisticated perspective on conducting and to become even better. The BCO has a strategic partnership with the Stulberg International String Competition. So this is a highly regarded string competition for young string players. So it can be violin, viola, cello, or string bass. It's in Western Michigan in Kalamazoo. It's not quite as well known as perhaps the Tchaikovsky competition that you may be familiar with, but it's an opportunity for brilliant young string players to start their careers. And some very well-known folks have started their career by winning this competition. And it's, I think the upper bound is 21 years old. So anyone up to 21. So these are really young kids who are fabulous players winning this competition. Our partnership with Stulberg specifies that we get their gold medal winner, their top winner each year, the following year to play a concerto with us. So you may have heard of Joshua Bell. He's considered one of the finest violinists of his generation. And he also became famous when he went into the Washington Metro and opened up his case and started playing on the platform of the Washington Metro. And of course, nobody recognized him, you know, that this was a world famous violinist, and people were tossing a few quarters and a couple of dollar bills. And, you know, he was playing the Tchaikovsky violin concerto. And people said, wow, it's unusually good for a guy on the subway. That was Joshua Bell. He's very famous. Jennifer Coe is also a renowned violinist. And Madeline Atkins, who was a gold medal winner, was the associate concertmaster of the Baltimore Symphony for many years. She was our concertmaster, the Chamber Orchestra's concertmaster for many years. And then a few years ago, she won the role of concertmaster in the Utah Symphony. So she moved down to Salt Lake, and we were very sorry to see her go. But all fabulous violinists. And one of the Stulberg winners, Vladimir Fung, who played with us, I think 3 years ago, 2 years ago, won the Tchaikovsky competition. So in the string section. So now he is probably the next Yo-Yo Ma, and the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra had him first. He played for us before he became Yo-Yo Ma. This year we're celebrating 1 year late the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth. He was born in 1770. And in order to honor the 250th anniversary, we decided to play all 5 of the piano concerti that Beethoven composed. So he only composed 5. As you know, he did 9 symphonies, but he did 5 piano concertos. And so we secured 5 world-class artists to perform with us in sequence. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in sequence, all 5 Beethoven piano concerti. It's a fantastic opportunity to hear an entire genre. It's never programmed. No symphony orchestra that I know of has ever played all 5 piano concerti in one season, but we are doing it. We've had our first performance with Benjamin Pasternak, which was incredible. And then this Sunday is Xiaohui Yang, who's going to play Beethoven's 2nd piano concerto. And I'm going to invite you all to come, but we'll talk more about that at the end. Okay, we have a third question for you. Why didn't Handel go shopping? And you have your continuing education credit question too. Wow, that's very good. So most of you, can you see this, Christine? Are we seeing the share? Okay. Almost all of you got this right. The Baroque period was 1600 to 1750. And it's 1750 is usually chosen as the end of the Baroque because that's the year that J.S. Bach died. So that's how we date the Baroque period. So now you must know the answer to this. This is Mr. Handel. Why didn't he go shopping? Because he was broke. He was Baroque. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the finances and organizational aspects of the BCO. So the BCO is a 501c3. We're a charitable organization, so we can accept donations, and people are able to take a charitable deduction for those donations. Our budget to put on 5 concerts a year and do some of these other activities, including the conducting workshops and Livewire, is about $350,000 a year. So we do a lot for not a lot of money. We're a very efficient organization. Our board is 15 to 20 trustees. These are all professionals in various fields who generously donate their time to help us bring great music to Baltimore. Our staffing, we only have 1 full-time administrative staff. So he is the one-armed paper hanger. He does a lot administratively in terms of budget, finances, marketing, communications, etc. Our music director is full-time. It doesn't take his full-time, but we have a full-time music director. And then many of our staff are part-time. So the musicians are part-time. They only play for us on a per service basis. So they get compensated for doing a concert and doing rehearsals, but they're not on salary. So they are part-time. Our personnel manager is part-time. Our stage manager is part-time. Our ticket manager is part-time. And then we have a number of volunteers who help us with taking tickets and food service during concerts. And so that is the staffing of the BCO. Let's talk about the budget. And this is a challenge for all of our orchestras across the United States. It's everyone has similar issues with their budget. So earned revenues are ticket sales and contract services. We don't do a lot of contract services, but we do sell subscriptions and tickets, and they comprise only about 15 to 20% of the total budget. How do we make up the rest of the budget? We get grants from the state, from the county, from the city. We get grants from foundations. We have donations from individual trustees. Many of our attendees love us and give us money in addition to just buying tickets. And then each year we do a beautiful gala. And I will tell you that our gala chairman is the remarkable Christine Hurt, who does a fabulous job, and I hope she'll invite you to join us for the gala. But that is also an important financial support for the organization. Okay, a fourth musical question. How do you know if a soprano is at your door? Now, here's a legit musical question. And, oh, it's interesting. So, almost half of you got it right. The braccio is the original Italian for viola, and in fact, the Germans stole that word. In all of the German musical scores, the viola is called a braccia. So that's taken directly from the Italian. Okay. More importantly, how do you know if a soprano's at your door? They can't find the key and they never know when to come in. Now, that's a very mean joke told by opera conductors. And we have more mean jokes coming up, so prepare yourself. Okay, so what does it take to run an orchestra? So I've told you our budget's around $350,000. So our staffing costs us about $100,000 a year. Between this is staffing, and it's also rent and utilities. It's our basic fixed cost for maintaining the organization. Art is a euphemism for musicians. This is what our musicians get paid over the course of the 5 concerts. You can see we do not have a full-time development staff. We spend very little on development. Our gala expense budget is about $15,000. We run it's a fabulous event, but we run it pretty tight. Marketing, this also includes video of our performance, so it's an unusually large number. We normally spend on advertising kinds of marketing. We just spend a couple of $1,000s a year. We do a bit on social media. We spend our best marketing dollars are spent on WBJC, which is the classical music station. So that's our natural audience. And then these are production expenses for use of our hall, rental of pianos, rental of instruments, rental of music, etc. Where does our income come from? So I've told you, I mentioned before that earned income is ticket sales and contract services. So we list the conducting programs under contract services, but you can see that ticket sales are only $44,000 out of a $350,000 budget. So ticket sales really don't cover the major portion of the budget. What does is contributed income, and that again comes from state, county, and city grants, as well as foundations, some support from foundations, a lot of support from trustees, and a lot of support from individual donors. So now I want to, okay, here's another set of mean musical jokes. So what is the difference between, the viola doesn't get a lot of respect, particularly from violin players, and I'm a violin player, so I can tell you viola jokes. So what is the difference between a viola and an onion? People cry when they cut up an onion. All right. And one more mean viola joke. What is the difference between a viola and a dead raccoon in the middle of the road? There are skid marks in front of the raccoon. All right. Now, lawyers tell the same joke about lawyers. I just want to say it's not uniquely a viola joke. Where did we get funding during the pandemic? So we didn't have any ticket sales really during the pandemic. How did we stay alive? So the federal government, as you know, set up some programs to support arts organizations. So we were able to get $34,000 for PPP-1. We were awarded $34,000 again for PPP-2. We successfully applied for the shuttered venue operating grant because we perform at a particular hall, but 34,000 is deducted from this. So we only netted 13,000 from the SVOG grant. And currently we have applied for a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts for smaller entities. And if we're awarded that, that will be $50,000. And it's a highly competitive grant. It's probably less than 50-50 whether we get it, but it would be immensely helpful to us if we were to get the NEA grant. I want to put our budget in perspective. So I've put on the screen the Baltimore Symphony's budget just for comparison purposes. So you notice our budget is around $350,000. The Baltimore Symphony's budget is about $30 million. They're about 100 times bigger than us. But notice our earned income is about 100 relative to 350. So we're just under a third in earned income. But the Baltimore Symphony, similarly in earned income, is about 10 million, is about a third of their total budget. Where does the rest of the money come from? It comes from contributions. It also comes from endowment income. So you notice, as a group of financial executives, I'm sure you couldn't help but notice the difference between this number and this number. So they spent $29 million and they only had income of $23 million. The Baltimore Symphony had a $6 million operating deficit in fiscal 2019, which is the most recent pre-COVID financials that I could pull. Some of that is made up by a $70 million endowment. But if you estimate a 5% spend out of endowment each year annually, that's only $3.5 million. So that's not enough to close this deficit. So you can see that small orchestras and large orchestras have are confronting the same issue of a gap between ticket sales and the expense that it takes to run the operation. So financial considerations for orchestras. First of all, these business models are broken. No orchestra that I know of supports itself solely through ticket sales. They're never enough to cover operating expenses. The other sources of support, corporate support, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, every major corporation was making substantial donations to arts organizations. They thought it was part of their mission. But over the last couple of decades, corporate support has really shifted from arts to social. And as we know, we have vast social needs. And you know, it's very important for corporates to try and address social needs in their geographies. But the net result of that is that there is less corporate support for arts funding. In the United States, government support is limited. In Europe, government support for the arts is vastly greater. In Russia, government support for the arts is vastly greater. In China, it's vastly greater. We have very limited government support. The government did step in during the pandemic to compensate for everybody being shut during COVID, and that was very important. But generally, long-term government support is limited, and we make up the deficit with individual donations. So another point, another takeaway is orchestras are not a scale business. We can't close the deficit by getting bigger because we have negative variable operating margins. We lose money at every concert. If we do more concerts, we're going to lose money faster. We lose more money. So it is not a business that scales. So what are the solutions for the deficits that orchestras, that are structural for orchestras? Well, we can continue to try and get more corporate support. And there's some signs that corporations are again thinking about the arts. We can sell more tickets. Now there's a huge gap, but every time we sell tickets, it's incremental. And perhaps we can do that with more innovative programming. Most of our audience for classical tends to be, say, 55 and up. We're not getting as many young attendees in their 20s and 30s. Sometimes it's just because they're busy with families, but often it's because they didn't study classical music. It's just not their vibe. We have to figure out how to reach those people and build younger audiences. We could create endowments. If the BCO had a $5 million endowment, it would cover our operating deficit very nicely. And then potentially there's the opportunity to tap into the next generation of philanthropy. So as you know, there's been a proliferation, enormous wealth creation over the last 2 decades, lots of family offices, lots of inherited wealth, and younger philanthropists are very interested in impact philanthropy. They want to donate money, and they want to see that their donations are having a substantial impact. And if we could attract those kinds of donors, they could certainly have an impact. A single large donor could single-handedly support the BCO and expand our operations. So this is on our list. Our to-do list is to try and figure this out. And I think every orchestra is thinking about this issue and figuring out ways to connect to some of the wealth creation that's happened over the last 2 decades. This is kind of a busy slide, but basically it's to point out that the arts have a huge economic impact. They're financially important in the United States. Arts production is about $1 trillion. It's about 4% of US GDP. And if you compare it against other specific sectors like construction or transportation and warehousing or mining or utilities, it's actually bigger. And then locally in Baltimore, the Maryland State Arts Council did a study and said every dollar that they spend on supporting arts organizations generates $2.20 in economic activity. So it's very productive locally for agencies to support the arts. Here's your last musical question, and I thought this was a tough one, so I thought I would award it CPE credit. Anyone that has studied music probably knows the answer to this. If you haven't studied music, you don't have a clue. But so C and E flat and G walk into a bar and ask for a drink. What does the bartender say? Of course, he says, sorry, we don't serve minors, because this is a minor key, C, E flat, and G. So I'd like to take the opportunity to invite you all to join us. Coincidentally, we have a concert this Sunday. This is our second concert of the year. We're going to be playing Mozart Symphony, a Haydn Symphony, and Beethoven's Second Piano Concerto. Our soloist is Xiaowei Yang. She is world class. Markan Thacker is going to conduct, and Jonathan Pilevsky will be narrating. We have an informants. And I will comp any of you that would like to come. So we'd like to introduce you to the BCO. It's going to be a fantastic experience. And, you know, I hope you'll be able to join us. So we can either, we won't be able to physically send you tickets, but if you let us know you want to come, we'll have tickets for you at will call. And all right, well, we have a couple people. Well, thank you. And if any of you change your minds, just come and say you're with FEI at the will call desk, and we'll provide tickets to you. Okay, now I'd like to do one more thing. I'm going to stop the slide deck. And I'm going to share, see if I can show you a little bit of a clip of our first concert of this year. Let's see if this will work. This is the Beethoven First Piano Concerto, and that was the orchestral introduction, and then I'm going to move you to where the soloist comes in. So that's what we do. And it's very beautiful. And I invite any of you to join us and bring friends. And I'll stop sharing and I'll take any questions that people have.
Does the BCO share musicians with other orchestras? Because it seems to me that being on a part-time basis, you can't make a living doing that. What else do the musicians do with their to earn income?
Right. Some of our musicians also play with the Baltimore Symphony. And the Baltimore Symphony is a full-time contract organization, but most of our musicians do a variety of things in professional music. So most of them teach, so they give private lessons to music students. They also do performances, so they'll do gigs. They'll play weddings and other things like that, and many of them play in multiple small orchestras. So we have a number of players that play with Annapolis, some play with Harrisburg, some play with the DC orchestras. Occasionally they'll sub with the National Symphony, or they'll play with the Kennedy Center Opera or ballet as well.
Kim, assuming you found your benefactor and they gave you a $5 million endowment, how would you change the BCO?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I think we'd expand our concert series. So right now we're doing 5. It would give us the opportunity to go to maybe 7 or 8. And I think we'd also use the money to expand venues, because I'd love to bring the BCO to other cities in Maryland. I'd love to play in Frederick, for example, and other places where we could bring the orchestra, where I think there would be an audience, and we would just need some additional financial support to do it. I mean, it's a brilliant ensemble that has a great product, and people would love it. And a lot of the smaller towns in Maryland don't have anything close to an orchestra of this caliber. So that would be my first thought on how to use the additional resources.
What do you consider your competition?
Well, on Sunday afternoons, it's the Ravens. But musically, I don't feel that we really have competition, because we're a chamber orchestra. So the Baltimore Symphony is not a chamber orchestra, it's a full symphony. And there are no other chamber orchestras of our caliber in Baltimore. You know, the Annapolis Symphony is very good, but and they also do a limited performance schedule over the course of a year. But they're a full symphony. So I think we're kind of a unique musical ensemble for the Baltimore Metro. But, you know, the big competition is people's time, other things that people like to do.
What services Columbia, that Howard County area?
You know, there's a couple of regional orchestras in Columbia. And I think they're either amateur ensembles or what I would call a heterogeneous ensemble. So they're mostly amateurs, but they will hire a couple of professionals and seed them in key positions in the orchestra to enhance the quality. But I don't think there's anything quite like us in Columbia.
Do you think the business paradigm will change post-pandemic? Do you expect patrons to come back and flock to the concerts in person?
Yeah, I think there's pent-up demand for live performance. I think people really missed it. Everybody I talked to, you know, felt a little trapped over the course of the pandemic, and you know, it's nice to watch stuff on your screen, and you can see performances on your screen, you can see music, you can see theater. But there's nothing like being there in person and being enveloped by the experience. And everybody I talk to has missed it a lot. And our subscribers at our first concert, people were very grateful for the opportunity to come back and see a great live performance. So I think as people feel safe, they will come back to live performance. And as the incidence of COVID diminishes and people feel it's much safer to be in large indoor groups, I think we'll rebuild our audiences. I think by the end of next year, we should again be seeing full audiences for the BCO and for other organizations.
Well, Kim, if there are no other questions, the FBI would certainly love to thank you for this entertaining and informative program. Also, we will make a contribution to the BCO.
Thank you. That's very kind. That's much appreciated. As you can tell, we need it.
Yes, and hopefully we'll find you a benefactor.
Well, that would be lovely. Well, it's really been a pleasure to talk to you all, and I hope you found it interesting. We're not quite as big as your next nonprofit that's going to be presenting, but we're feisty. And the BCO has been around for 37 years, giving brilliant performances, and we're going to continue to do so. And we look forward to doing that for all of our community in Baltimore, and we hope you guys will come and taste the cooking.
Again, Christine, thank you for arranging this, and Kim, thank you for presenting. And please keep in mind our December 8th program regarding the Seventh-day Adventists and their multi-billion-dollar organization. So without further ado, we thank you again, Kim.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.